Hey, I believe we're live. Hey, good evening, guys. Thank you so much for joining in for the B.NET user group meet on March. Before we start with the event, I would like to give a brief introduction about myself and the group, and then we will jump into the event. Right. So my name is Swami. I work as an architect at Maersk, and I am on Microsoft MVP and Developer Technologies. I'm one of the organizers for B.NET and Exacus UG in Bangalore, and my GitHub handle is github.com/svswaminathan. I do write technical blogs occasionally at my blog, which is swaminathanvetri.in. And if you want to follow me on Twitter, that's my Twitter handle. Right. And this group is called B.NET, which is nothing but Bangalore.NET user group. So this is one of the oldest user groups in Bangalore since 2005's time. And we've been evolving as and when the technology evolve. And now we are having our live events and virtual meetups. Right. So if you want to be part of our meetup, so you can join at meetup.com/b.netug, or if you're more active on Facebook, you can join the groups there. And we also have a presence on Twitter. And b.net.in is our basic website about the community and the events what we conduct. We kind of share it there. And we also recently started our YouTube channel, so that's the link for it. And we're also on Discord to have more close collaboration with the tech community. So that's our Discord handle too. I will share these links as well in the show notes so that you can join us. And yeah, so thanks to our sponsors. So this meetup is sponsored by Dotnet Foundation, and we also have Microsoft and JetBrains as other sponsors. Yeah, and I want to give a brief about .NET Foundation, if in case you are not completely aware about that, right? So .NET Foundation is an open source consortium, right? So the motive is to be more independent and then more innovative and foster the openness, basically. Right. So what does .NET Foundation do, and what kind of things you can get out of the foundation, right? So if you are working on any kind of .NET projects, open source projects, and if you're looking for legal IP or any kind of contributor license agreements, or if you know how to set up the copyrights and trademarks, etc., you could definitely take help from the foundation, and then you can leverage that. And also, if you are looking for any kind of dev practices about the governance or setting up the feedback for your projects and the mentorship and things like that, that's also available. And of course, like the marketing communication about the events, right? Like what we are doing currently, this is also hosted by .NET Foundation's virtual meetup group, right? So you can also get that out of the foundation. And about the support, we also get some sort of hosting and the code signing. And in Azure DevOps, you get good support to set up your DevOps pipelines for your open source projects, etc. So anything to do with open source in .NET, if you are into it, you have to be part of .NET Foundation, right? And it's good to be part of .NET Foundation, basically. And to know more about .NET Foundation, there are multiple ways you can get yourselves involved. So you can be a member of the foundation. So just go to .NETfoundation.org/become member, and then you can submit your nomination, and then the foundation would look at it and then approve it. Right. And you can also join other meetups if you're a fan of attending meetups. So you can go look at the other .NET Foundation sponsored meetups at meetup.com/pro/.net. And if you are running a meetup which is not part of the foundation yet, you could also do that. And there's also a newsletter which you could sign up for. And as I said, the projects, if you want to get your projects as part of the foundation umbrella, you could very well do that too. And for any other things, you can contact the foundation. All right. The next thing is about the speakers. So we've got Amit today. I think he's here with me. So he is a senior developer advocate at AWS, and he's joining us from the US. I believe it's in New York. So I leave his introduction during his session. So I'm not going to talk too much about him. But thank you so much, Amit, for taking time and sharing the knowledge with our community. And moving on, so this is a pretty sleek agenda today. So this is the introduction session what we're having now, and then there's going to be only one session which is going to be for 75 minutes. So Amit would be talking about AWS Cloud for .NET developers, and then at the end of it we are having 10 minutes for the Q&A and quiz, and at the end of the session around 9 p.m. IST, we would have feedback on the raffle. Right. So there is a quiz which we'll unveil at the end of the session. So you stand a chance to win five people can win AWS credits. And just a bit of event etiquette. So Q&A will be handled at the end of the session, right? But you can keep posting your questions in the YouTube comment section, and then we will pull it up and during the Q&A, and then we'll get them answered. And if in case we're running out of time, we'll definitely have them answered in the comment box as well. Right. And you could also tweet your experience using this hashtag with B.NET. And we're also open for feedback. So submit your feedback at the end of the event at b.net.in/feedback. Right. Okay. So if in case there are a few audience, so I would like you to have a bit of a poll. So if you can open your mobile or in website, you can just go in your desktop. You can go to www.menti.com and use this code, and it will be good if you could fill up this poll so that we'll get the idea about what your experience and your background about the AWS support for .NET. Right. Once that is done, then we'll just give a couple of minutes for you to just log in and then access this poll, and then we would get started with the session. Yeah. So yeah, guys, please open menti.com in your mobile or in the browser, and then just use the code. This is since it's more of virtual event, right? So we wanted to make it more interactive. So this is one of the ways of interacting with the audience. So we would like to get your inputs. So as and when any of you start filling the poll, we keep getting the answers. I think somebody has. That's good. Yeah, we are getting the responses now. Right? 3 people have responded. That's good. So we'll just leave another minute or so, and then we would I'll hand it over to Amit for him to start with this session. All right. So it's very little, and then a lot of people are looking forward to learn today. We'll just give next 30 seconds, and then the session would get started. And you guys can continue to keep responding to this so that we would tailor the content accordingly too, right? All right, that's a good mix. Cool. Over to you, Amit. So maybe let's get started, and then I'll get back at the end of the session to unveil the quiz and then the other goodies what we have. Yeah, over to you, Amit.
Thank you. Thanks, Swami. Can you confirm that you can hear and you can see my screen?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm able to hear you very well. Just a minute. I'm able to hear you very well. Maybe your screen is visible too.
Okay, cool. Wonderful.
Right.
Thank you. Thanks for that wonderful introduction, Swami and team. My name is Amit Jha. I work as developer advocate at AWS. And today, in next hour and a half, my plan is to give you run through of all things .NET on AWS. Okay. I've been with AWS little over 5 years and been in the industry for a little over 16 years. Development, architecture, cloud, end-to-end CI/CD, DevOps, security. That's where I'm more comfortable. I live in New Jersey. I work out of New York, so I have good amount of financial services customers that I work with. So I'll be bringing those use cases as the discussion goes along. For today, I understand there are many people who are new to AWS, so I'll quickly give AWS Primer, very short, and then move into the topic of the day, which is AWS tools for .NET developers, show you different tool sets that we have, and then understand what are the different migrations and modernizations path for a .NET application on AWS. Along with that, obviously, when you bring an application, it's also productionizing. How do you trace? How do you monitor? How do you do authentication, authorization? So we'll touch upon those topics as well. As you can see, I have good amount of agenda to pack it in within 1.5 hours. So put your questions as you get, and I'll make sure that we keep some time at the end and touch those questions also. Okay. So before anything tech, the first thing is what's the business goal, right? The driver behind moving to the cloud. It could be revenue streams, it could be cost savings, it could be lowering the business risk. Different enterprises have different goals, right? With COVID, digital transformation has become pretty significant. Many customers are looking to jump the hoop and get more cloud native. A speed with which things are being built, the innovation speed. Many enterprise customers want to actually get that nimbleness of a startup and get that CI/CD pipeline going so that they can actually produce valuable outcome for their customers. Right? Sometimes it starts with just simple cost savings. Hey, I have significant amount of cost in my data centers. I may want to consolidate them. That's a very valid reason. Sometimes, basically, on-prem, you do not have the services that are available in the cloud. Many of the higher level like AI, ML, analytics services. So essentially, many customers bring those data onto cloud and then actually enrich, harness the power of AI, ML, and get more value out of their data. So there are many different business drivers. So it's very important to get that clarity. What's the business driver to going to the cloud? And then looking at the use cases that you map. because sometimes it can go into many different directions. What is AWS? Very top level, it basically has set of regions. Each region is put a set of availability zone. Each availability zone has multiple data centers. Each data center underlying you have the actual compute instances, right? I like to see the mapping of it. The key distinction you have to understand is between the availability zones. So you got the region, which is different locations around the world. Availability zones are one or more discrete data centers, each with redundant power, networking, and connectivity, housed in separate facilities. When I say separate facilities, they are basically miles apart. Right? So that's the key distinction you have to keep in mind. When you are actually building your application architectures, you may do a multi-AZ based design or multi-region based design. Having that clarity of how much distance is there, what's the latency between the two will help you actually design your application architecture better. Obviously, this is a good eye chart of all the AWS services. Actually, some of them are missing here. The goal is not to overwhelm you. Today, we'll focus more towards the .NET oriented services that you probably want to start playing with. What do we mean when we actually bring a workload onto AWS or a cloud? It always starts with a shared responsibility model, right? The keyword I look for is off and in. So we are responsible for anything off the cloud. So think of it like hypervisor down, power, cooling, everything in the data center. That's on us. Anything you bring into the cloud, you have the responsibility. We give you tools, like if you bring in data, we give you tools to encrypt, decrypt. We give you tools to authenticate and authorize. So essentially, whatever you bring in, using the tools and services, you have the responsibility for the securing those data and applications. Right? And we give you tons of services, right? These are different pillars across identity, detection, infrastructure protection, data protection, incident response, compliance. One thing I would want to highlight is traditionally it has been very hard to actually have automated security, whereas in the cloud, it becomes much easier because every resource, when it changes, you have an ability to actually have some kind of trigger or a hook, which can check whether you want that change to happen or not, or you can actually track whether in real time who made those changes. So it's much easier. You can have automated security. Along with that, obviously, there are many services. The two areas that I want to highlight is the ML stack, AI ML stack, and we will probably be seeing a couple of demos today. And the second is data analytics. Once you bring in the data, there is so much value that can be produced out of it. And we provide many services to do ETL and doing dashboarding, visualization on top of that data. We have our services, but we have many AWS partners who are building on top of AWS and enhancing and building on top of AWS. And we also have many other products in our AWS marketplace that enhances the AWS offering. Okay, so that was very quick primer. If I have to summarize it, remember regions, availability zones, mapping. Understand the application architecture, multi-AZ and multi-region. Understand the services and capabilities, and also look for different level of abstractions when you actually start bringing your application onto AWS. So did we start supporting .NET today or yesterday? It has been significant. Like it's been 12 plus years of innovation supporting .NET on AWS. As you can see, early 2008, we started supporting different edition of Windows, different editions of SQL Server, .NET Framework, .NET Core, Active Directory integration, traceability, authentication and authorization. If you see, we have come along and supporting .NET 5. So we are the first cloud provider to be .NET 5 ready. What are the tool sets that typically any .NET developer would want to have, right? Here is very quick summary. On the left, you see the IDE integration, the Visual Studio. I mean, any .NET developer, the first thing they want to look at is what do you support or provide inside Visual Studio, right? We have the toolkit for Visual Studio. We have toolkit for Visual Studio Code, and we also support toolkit for JetBrains Rider, right? So that's on the IDE integration front. The second is the SDK, right? Whenever a .NET developer comes in, he's like, I want to manipulate this service. I want to use this service. What's the way? What's the SDK? How do I use it? So we provide both .NET Framework and .NET Core-based SDK, which you can use and manipulate AWS services. Right? Beyond that, we also have command line, PowerShell, CI/CD, DevOps integrations with AWS Code Suite services, as well as our partners like Jenkins, Shippable, Atlassian, Bitbucket, Azure DevOps, we integrate with those two. Okay, so let's get into the demo mode. I want to understand the .NET capabilities. So here you go. Let's get in. Here is my. So what I did before coming on is I installed the extension. If I go to the extension, in this case, I have 2019, and I search for AWS. Here is the AWS Toolkit for Visual Studio. I have already installed this toolkit. Once you install this toolkit, the first thing that you will notice is something called AWS Explorer. So AWS Explorer is ability to see AWS services right inside Visual Studio. For the folks who are very new to AWS, one thing I want to highlight is you actually sign up for an AWS account. And once you have signed up, you get into the console. In the console, you can actually see all the services, right? Start manipulating. The first thing you may do is creating an IAM account, or you may have a federation-based integration. Once you create the IAM account, you link your Visual Studio with the same. So here, if you see here, if I want to specify new account profile, I can say, and I can specify the account number with which this will connect. So basically, if I see here, I see these buckets. I go in here, let's go to the S3 service, right? And hopefully the demo gods are happy. Here you go. So you can see I see the same set of buckets here too. Same buckets are being listed. So the idea behind providing you the AWS Explorer is basically you do not have to go outside of Visual Studio. You are able to see all the resources right inside Visual Studio. And not just see, you can actually do operations also. Like here are my instances, right? I can actually connect, I can do operations, I can do RDP session. So making it more meaningful and rich right inside Visual Studio. That's the first thing we provide you off the bat, right? And depending on the application type, you would see different set of deployment wizards that we expose. So here is a web application. Let me quickly show you this. Here you go. Okay, this is a typical ASP.NET application. I'm using D3 to do client-side sorting, filtering, right? This is a typical web-based application. We actually expose right inside Visual Studio, because of the toolkit, deployment wizards right from Visual Studio. So if you see, I'm here, I'm looking to publish to Beanstalk. This is another one of our past-like service. So I actually have published this application off the bat. So if I go here and see the Beanstalk link, here is the same application deployed to Beanstalk, right? So the idea here is once you have installed the toolkit, you are able to connect the Explorer to your account, and you're able to see resources right inside the AWS Explorer, inside Visual Studio. And we also expose the deployment wizards. Obviously, you may actually do the right-click deployment just for testing purposes, but it actually gives you a pretty neat, fast way of iterating, like deploy, see, check, come back, fix, deploy in your own dev test account. So that way, the iteration becomes much faster. Okay. We also have integration with Visual Studio Code. I have installed the AWS Toolkit here. I can again see the AWS Explorer and list of resources. And we also have integration with JetBrains Writer. Okay. That was a quick demo of the integrations, right? You're able to see the resources. We also give you blueprints right inside Visual Studio. So let's go in and show you a couple of blueprints. So I want to create a new, as you can see here, in this platform, I'm choosing AWS, and we give you our serverless Lambda, which is equivalent to the Azure function, right? And you choose that, and we come back with a different set of boilerplate functions. As you can see, we are .NET 5 ready. So we have both .NET 5 container-based support as well as .NET 5 custom runtime-based support. So I can choose, it can create a default code-based, let's choose one and quickly show you what I mean by the boilerplate functions. And hopefully the demo gods are happy. Right. So here you go. As you can see, this is the image label. So anytime an object is being uploaded to a S3, which is our scalable object storage, the Lambda function will come in and execute and do some kind of recognition to see the attributes inside that image that got uploaded. Right here, you go. You can see this is the actual Lambda handler, and as soon as this comes, it may call the recognition API, detect the attributes inside that image. But this is the idea here is to show you templated project templates and boilerplate code that gets generated. Right, right-click deployment. So now this is a serverless application, so we will get deployed to AWS Lambda, right, from Visual Studio. Right, you choose the attributes to specify the details, and it publishes it. Right-click publish is also exposed via CLI command line. Okay, and if you have to see here, I have configured the connected this command line, and I can list down all the basically you install the AWS CLI, you configure the connectivity, specify the access key, secret access key, or you could do a federation based also, where right. And then once you're connected, you can start using command line. Similarly, PowerShell, you could do the same thing. Here you go. This is again connected. I can use PowerShell commandlets and do different operations. So CLI, PowerShell. Inside Visual Studio, we have the AWS, again repeating here, but this is important that you would start typically with a toolkit. So once you install the toolkit, the goodies that I showed you starts appearing inside your Visual Studio. Okay, so those same things in a screenshot, we give you publish wizards, Visual Studio code, again, starter project templates, rider support we have for serverless based applications. The next is basically Programmable Sdk. So I showed you initially when I started the list of AWS services, right? And if you have to manipulate them, you would need the SDK. So what I'll do is now quickly show you a demo for SDK manipulation. We saw the S3 scalable object storage. What I'm going to do is I'm going to iterate through the same list of S3 buckets via code. First thing first, you actually take a dependency, right? And we have, let's say, AWS SDK. And then you can see we pretty much expose for each services, we have a SDK offering, right? AWS SDK. Once you refer, there is a typical pattern, which is Amazon.servicename, Amazon.servicename.model. So that's a typical model. Any service you're manipulating, you would do the same. EC2, EC2.model, DynamoDB, DynamoDB model. So you get that pattern, right, for each service, so to make it simple, right? And create the client and call the object. So we are developers. Let me do this. What I'll do is I'll do a quick debug here. So this is checking for required fields. Let's see here. In this case, what's the profile? In this case, I have specified the AWS profile name as Meetup Foundation. As you can see on the left, the Explorer can connect to multiple profiles. So as a developer, you may work on one account, you may work on multiple accounts. So you can create different profiles, right? So in this case, I am connecting to the same account. Let's go in. I created the S3 client object. And let's just see what that client object is. Right, it's a scalable object storage. What do you think? It will have copy, it will have delete, right? And it gives you exposes both sync, async. So synchronous based calls or asynchronous based call, right? So we expose those. Let's go in, and here I am iterating through the buckets. Actually, let's step into it and see the details of it. Here you go. So it called the list bucket. It gave me a response. And then I'm iterating through each bucket. So you get a neat typed object, bucket name, and other set of properties. And then I'm just, in this case, iterating through it and listing down the same set of bucket that we saw here, as well as on the console. Right. So again, I repeat, what did I do here? It's basically I took the dependency, and each of them are published by NuGet packages. So you choose the AWS SDK dot. In this case, I chose the S3. Right. Once you have it, you import S3 typical pattern for any services. Create the client of it. Once you create the client of it, you have the ability to iterate through and call different functions. And depending on the service type, you will have different set of methods. And that's what is the learning. As we go along, we'll see some other use cases of the same. Okay, so that's a very quick demo on the SDK side, right? One key thing here is you would say, Amit, AWS has APIs, and this SDK has called those APIs. I didn't get to know the underpinnings, like does the API call need JSON-based serialization, XML-based serialization? How did the marshalling go through? All that is abstracted from you. So that's the beauty of SDK. It makes it much seamless, right? And as I showed you, the typical pattern, it's a consistent SDK coding pattern using service name model, create the client, service name client, and then you call the operations. Okay, the same demo that you saw here is the code set. In this case, it's called via the sync await function. Okay, so that was a very quick demo on how to use AWS SDK for .NET and manipulate different AWS services. Now, you showed me, Amit, so many different services. How do I decide and how to explore that? So I always look at, like, don't boil the ocean. You do not have to know all the AWS services. Depending on which application you are working, you would look to map the type of services that you're interested in. Take an example. Let's take a web application you're working. In that case, you are looking for compute where you can have either hosting, or if you're looking to modernize them, go to a higher level of abstraction. At a very high level, there is VM based, container based, and serverless based. Right? VM based essentially EC2. Container based, we have ECS, which uses our own orchestration, EKS, which uses Kubernetes orchestration, and serverless based, we have Lambda step functions, right? And there are serverless containers called Fargate. These are the services at the compute level. Storage level, you may say scalable object storage, S3. You want to use some kind of caching, we have Elasticache. You want to use database, we have RDS managed, and it supports many different underlying database engine like SQL, Oracle, MariaDB, MySQL, DynamoDB, our NoSQL offering, right? So understanding the list of services for your application is the first thing that I look to start. Typical applications journey, how let's say on-prem to AWS works. Like, this is your classic typical 3-tier based architecture. You can see web tier, API tier, and data tier. Once you get it onto AWS, we may just map it to, let's say, as is, I am getting it. So in this case, I'm not actually looking to go more container or serverless. I'm just looking to replicate what I have on-prem onto AWS. So what you look for is basically the configurations of your on-prem machines. Look for the right instance types that would map, and then replicate. So you could do a snapshot and get a export import kind of way of exporting it, or you create a EC2 instance and deploy your applications via some kind of CI/CD pipeline. So as you can see, this is a typical pattern where customers start. We call it lift and shift, move and tune, but this is the first level. We don't stop here. So basically now you start looking at, hey, I have good amount of operations work, because the more VMs are, the more operations work will be there, because upgrades, patching is on you. So then you look for, like, what are all areas can be moved into maybe managed services or maybe serverless services, where all I care about is my own code, and the serverless services takes care of auto scaling depending on my request pattern. So this is one example of how I am actually taking that same application. This is primarily serverless stack. Don't worry if you're not familiar with the service names, but the idea here is, think of this as a service gate. So any API service I'm exposing via API gateway, and then the actual compute is Lambda, the serverless. And then I actually introduce SQS and SNS. Think of it like queuing and pub sub model, just from a decoupling point of view. So request came in, API gateway gave it to Lambda, Lambda put it into queue. Automatically from queue, there is a processing by another Lambda, and via SNS it notified that, hey, it's done. So the idea here is I move towards more serverless. Why? Because I do not want to do the operations work. I want to rather focus on my application and add newer use cases. Similarly, on the data tier, I moved from having, let's say, SQL Server on EC2 to an RDS or other offerings, right? So typically that's where the conversation starts. When we go for like application portfolio analysis, hey, this application needs to move to AWS. Should we move it as is? Should we refactor this application? This is in .NET framework. What would it take to go to .NET Core, right? So that's the conversation we have. And the three compute engine discussions are around EC2, Lambda, and containers, right? EC2 is your typical VM. Lambda is the serverless offering, and containers is you basically take the VM but actually create the packaging and Docker based so that you actually can get more ounce from your EC2 underlying EC2 machines. This is quick mapping of if you have an application .NET framework based versus .NET Core or .NET 5 based. So .NET framework, the offerings are EC2, Beanstalk, Lightsail, Elastic Container Service, and Elastic Kubernetes Service. This is where the .NET framework based applications can be deployed to. So underlying containers is basically Windows container. .NET Core has more wider choice, and that's where the Fargate, the serverless container, or Lambda comes in, right? One quick thing, let me quickly show you the Beanstalk where customers start. I showed you the application that we deployed. So let's go in. Okay, so that's the application, right? It's simple ticket sales data across different cities. Okay, so that's the application I have deployed on AWS. Here you go. So now what I'll do is I'll go inside the console and show you that same application. So here is the application. That's the link, right? And it gives you pretty neat dashboard for health monitoring. I can set up alarms. I can check in terms of what's the request pattern out of the box. Like all you did was right-click deploy, or maybe you called the same right-click deploy via command line or integrated in your CI/CD pipeline, right? That's it. Beyond that, we created the underlying environment. So created the underlying EC2, deployed the application, configured the auto scaling, and configured the alarms, configured the logging, monitoring, right? So this is by default. This is why I say, like, when you have a web application, API, websites, and you're not very sure like where to start, just map it to Elastic Beanstalk. That's probably the best way to start, get going. It gives you pretty neat integration end to end with logging, health monitoring, ability to manage updates, right? So those are all out of the box that you get. You can customize it. Like let's say if you want to have more blue-green based deployment setup, all that is available out of the box, right? This next level is basically when you want to go towards containers, and that's where like in the same application here, I can say that, hey, if I say here, add Docker support, right? Now it will start my Docker on this instance. There you go. Okay, give it a few seconds. Okay, I'll update that later. And once you get that by default Docker-based support, now I have ability to actually containerize it and then deploy it onto ECS or EKS. Do we provide some tools for the same? We have a couple of tools. If you have an application, let's say if you have a legacy .NET framework-based application and you're looking to get them to .NET Core, we have a tool called Porting Assistant for .NET, Porting Assistant for .NET, where you can bring in your existing solution and it will actually do a compatibility analysis, and it can actually give you detailed like, hey, what you are referring to, which one is compatible, which one is incompatible, You can also see the API level details, and it can go up to the level of source code, which APIs are being called inside which CS files. Right. So porting assistant for .NET is a pretty neat tool to help you analyze your existing .NET framework-based application. Like typically, you want to understand the level of effort that's needed to port that application from .NET Framework to .NET Core. In my experiences working with different set of customers, API-based applications are easier to port to .NET Core. If you have thick client-based applications like WinForms, WPF, those are more harder. WCF, depending on like Windows Communication Foundation, sometimes has more configurations. So I call it Windows Configuration Service sometimes. But if it is just a standard CRUD-based operations, those are easier to port. ASP.NET MVC, ASP.NET Web API are if unless there is significant dependencies, they're easier to port to .NET Core. Again, you want to understand the list of effort that's needed, and based on that, take the call, right? Because you have to understand the incompatibilities, understand the changes that you may have to do, and then move towards .NET Core. Okay, so let's go in. Okay, .NET 5 support. I showed you the .NET container image. By default, boilerplate. We have it for the blueprints for Lambda functions. We have the command line based templates that I was saying. Right click deploy. Same thing is available via the .NET CLI extensions. We give you EC2 Linux Army for .NET 5. Right. You can just filter it down. That's available. And this is where you come in and start discussing in terms of where do I run my code? Is it EC2 instances? Is it containers? Or is it Lambda or serverless? Right. Typically, you want to port as much as when it is possible. You must have heard or seen many conversations around moving from a traditional monolithic single stack based application to a more modern microservices, decoupled services. Like each service has its own API, it has its own data store, and they all communicate via public kind of HTTP, HTTPS, right? So that's a typical pattern of refactoring your existing application. Porting assistant comes very useful. As I said, consider porting assistant to analyze your application, understand the different set of dependencies that you have, the NuGet packages, API calls, and the level of effort that would be needed. The second, yes, porting assistant also provides you a dependency graph. Where you can actually learn more about. Sometimes actually we go to many customers and say, we don't know actually which one calls which one. We don't have understanding of the whole, because I mean, it's been ages, years that it has been built. So porting assistant helps you actually understand those dependencies also pretty neatly. Right. I showed you quickly. The another tool is basically the app to container. If you want to package a .NET Framework application into containers, and you do not want to actually work with the underpinnings of, Docker, Docker file creation, how do you manage the containers? So app to container actually gives you a pretty neat tool that will actually go through your, let's say you deploy it on your IIS web server. It will actually go through and find out all the applications that are there, and then actually give you ability to containerize them in a wizard fashion. You do not have to know the underpinnings of how do I create ECS service, ECS task, how do I map the application to it. So this is another application. Like if you have a legacy framework based application and you just want to containerize them, app to container is definitely you want to explore and see if that can help you. App to container also does auto containerization for Java based apps also, right? Other .NET modernization. So when you bring in .NET based application, traditional applications may have some kind of caching tier, right? One example is maybe you want to evaluate if Redis Elastic Cache can help you. We give you direct configuration-based ability to change, right? Just here, I can change the session state provider just by changing the endpoint to Redis, and from there onwards, your session starts getting stored into the Redis session state provider. That's one example of modernizing. When you're bringing the applications, you also want to understand how the call flows are. When the API calls are being made, how much time is spent in each layer, and that's where our AWS X-Ray support comes in. once you have X-Ray integrated in your application, you'll be able to see the whole call stack. So think of it like a web call came in from there, it called service, from there it called data tier. You can actually see the actual call stack, and it is very useful for like a performance troubleshooting use cases, right? All you do is you specify the X-ray recorder, the services that you want to capture, and it'll start giving you that service map. Another neat integration that we have is for typical applications will have list of services, right? You may have compute, may have databases, may have other set of services. So the App Insights gives you ability to actually group them and create a dashboard and get insights and summary of how that has been used. Very useful for, again, performance troubleshooting and T2 based stacks. Right. So we looked at tool sets of AWS for .NET developers. Remember, AWS Toolkit for Visual Studio. We looked at SDK support, both for .NET Framework as well as .NET Core, .NET 5. We understood different abstraction tier, right? Understood in terms of, hey, I can actually bring that application into VM. In that case, I have to take care of the infrastructure-oriented work like patching, upgrade, all that is on me. I can go to more, let's say, Elastic Beanstalk, where it abstracts a lot of things for me and does those things on my behalf. We can go to containers or serverless. Again, if you are able to port your application to .NET Core, in that case, definitely you would want to explore going to serverless. You say, this is great, we got that, but usually I have a CI/CD pipeline in my organization, right? I have a DevSecOps pipeline. How do I integrate with those? And AWS actually has its own code suite services, but it also integrates with most of the widely used CI/CD providers. So at the top left, you see here, these are the AWS code suite services, right? Code build, code commit, code deploy, code pipeline. Code pipeline is the orchestrator. So basically, go get the code, do the code build, and do the code deployment. So it gives you ability to do different kind of events also while you are doing CI/CD. And it does not mean that you have to use AWS code services only. You could very well integrate AWS code pipeline with other like Jenkins, Atlassian products, right? We also integrate with Azure DevOps. So you can keep the source code in Azure DevOps, give us the binary, and we do the hosting. Or you could give us the code and we do the build and then deploy it onto the compute services. Both the ways we integrate, right? We are today looking at primarily .NET, but we have many other SDKs on different languages that we support. We looked at integration with Visual Studio, but we have many other IDEs that we integrate with, right? These are some of the CI/CD partners that we integrate. If nothing else, you can have a hook, and based on that, you can integrate via the same also. And now I'll quickly move on to another area. Like modernization does not mean that you move from VM based to container to serverless. Modernization can mean a lot of other things, right? One of the area where I'm seeing many customers actually look at their existing application and see, are there use cases that can be added in that application, leveraging maybe higher level auto trained AI services, right? This is a good eye chart of all the AI ML services. Think of it like the three different personas at the bottom tier. The ML framework and infrastructure caters to kind of the machine learning scientist, right, who wants to have the complete control on the infrastructure. The second tier is basically uh, the machine learning people who are actually creating model, training them against different data. So it's a cycle. Like you have an algorithm, you're training against different set of data. The third, which is the everyday developer who wants to actually use auto-trained AI services, right? Who do not have the amount of time to actually create and train a model. So this is where most of the .NET-based application integration I'm seeing these days. Like these services are not available on-prem. So these applications can actually leverage these services either on-prem or on the cloud, right? Let me quickly show you a quick demo of an integration here. Go in, here you go. Okay, this is, I'm integrating with one of our service, AWS Comprehend. think of it like a sentiment analysis, right? Given a text, it can understand and do a sentiment analysis. So this is text here. I just wanted to find some really cool new places I have never visited before. And it has some actual suggestions and also some sentiments. So you can see just terrible. So what I'm going to do is I'm quickly going to call the comprehend API. So remember the drill of referral. I'm referring the AWS SDK.comprehend, right? You go in the amazon.comprehend, amazon.comprehend.model. So I'm going to go quickly do a debugging here. Okay, so that's the text file that you saw. That's the input, the same thing. Yeah, so that's the one. Right? It does have sentiment. It has some entities. It has, this is in English. So let's go in. And the comprehend API has different set of functions to detect different values. So in this case, I'm calling find out the language, find out the different entities, find out the key phrases, find out the sentiment inside this. Okay, I call those APIs. And just to show you, here you go, detect sentiment. This is the comprehend client, as you would expect. Exposes you those set of functions that you would think in a sentiment analysis. Entities, language, key phrases, and overall sentiment. So here you go. And then I put that output into a file. Okay, so it should have generated a file, comprehend. Here is the output. It found the language code EN. It found the entities 2021, type is date, and it gives you a score. So based on the score, you can have a percentage of score on which you want to take the values. Here are some of the key phrases that it detected. No luck, the stop score. And last, it actually found the sentiment negative. Remember, we saw the word terrible, so that shows a kind of sentiment, right? So very quickly, what we did here is we used one of the AI service, right, comprehend, to do sentiment analysis, reused the AWS .NET SDK, and call the different methods on the comprehend to get language, entities, different key phrases, and also sentiments, right? We can do similar exercise for different set of operations, right? Here you go. This is translate. Same thing, right? And take the language in English and do the translations in different set of files, right? I could transcribe. Same drill. Take a file and then transcribe it. If you given media, it'll do the transcription. Recognition, again, give an image. It will be able to find out faces. It can find out attributes. And after that, you can have your own additional use cases, right? That was a very quick example of AI integration inside your application. Typical pattern, if you see here, the same thing. The Amazon, and instead of translate, you can say comprehend client instead of, so that it's the same thing. Give the input, what input it would need. In this case, it needs a text, and then call the corresponding functions, right? So that brings me to the summary of the discussions today. We started with a toolkit. Let me quickly repeat the things that we have seen. We started with extensions, right? Remember AWS Toolkit. I want to keep repeating this. Once you install the extension, you see the AWS Explorer, right? You connect your AWS Explorer with your AWS account. Once you have connected, you are able to see your resources and you are able to manipulate those resources right inside Visual Studio. Once you have installed the toolkit, you are able to see a different set of deployment wizards pop up, right? Right-based deployment, right? That comes up here. You also see boilerplate templates for AWS platform, right? Here you go. You can see the serverless application, And I may actually have a serverless application. Here you go. This one I created quickly. Very simple API. Hello meetup. So we give you a mock tool also. So here is the mocking tool. I can execute it, and here is the. So I can actually do a quick debugging and client side for serverless based application. Once I am done, I can do a right click and do a publish. Right, choose the region where you want to deploy, and publish the application. Right, so we give you that. Right click publish is also available via .NET CLI extensions. So let's say if you have a CI/CD pipeline, you can call those to simulate the same right click deploy in your DevSecOps pipeline. Right. We saw that there are 3 different abstraction tiers for compute on AWS: EC2, containers, and serverless Lambda functions. We saw that typically, if you have a .NET framework based application, you first do an analysis using. We gave you 2 tools. One is Porting Assistant for .NET, which analyzes and gives you detailed information on dependency graph. It shows you the NuGet packages, compatible, incompatible, and also shows you actual CS file where those incompatible APIs are being called. Right, helps you understand the level of effort that it would take to port that .NET framework-based application to .NET Core or .NET 5. The second tool that we quickly discussed was the app to container. So if you have a legacy .NET framework-based application, think of it like IaaS machine where you can deploy app to container. It will go through, find out all the applications deployed on the IaaS, and can automatically auto-containerize those applications onto AWS. You do not have to understand the underpinnings of, let's say, ECS, the Elastic Container Service that we have, has service, task, and underlying manipulations. Those are all abstracted from you. It will give you the endpoint published once the application is deployed. Right. And last, we looked at modernization does not mean just going to the different abstraction tier. It also means enriching your application. You can keep your .NET framework based application on-prem and add newer use cases, right? We discussed a simple thing like maybe I want to use one of the AI services, right? And enrich those. Once the application is on AWS, you can enrich more. Like maybe the data we can actually integrate with QuickSight and get a BI dashboard created, right? So you can continuously modernize the application and add newer use cases and enrich the application continuously. I'll give you another example. Chatbots, right? I see many customers actually adding chatbots in their application. Very simple. Like there are always list of questions that users will have, and you can automatically using Lex, right? You could also do voice-based integrations. Like most of the time, you're click and mouse-based. You can also integrate with voice-based integration, right? Maybe there is an Alexa skill that calls the same API for your application. So there are many, many use cases that you will keep on thinking once you start exploring different services offerings that are available. Okay. With that, I want to give you resources because I know in an hour it's very hard to actually learn all the things, right? I mean, this is just a start. The first thing, and this deck will be shared. You can use this deck. And the first thing I want to share is you want to bookmark the aws.amazon.com/net. So if you do this, that takes you here. Same thing, developer language net. So this is our homepage, all things .NET on AWS. We have step-by-step guides. We have code samples, and you can start exploring the same. Right. Once you go in, you'll find different code samples for different area. Right. That's the first thing that you want to start. You want to be connected with us on Twitter. There are two. We have a .NET on AWS handle. And this is my handle on Twitter. We keep publishing a lot of new resources in Twitter. So let me quickly go in and show you the integration that we have. Okay, so let's say recently I published, if you are a .NET developer and you are looking to learn. So we showed you the .NET. We have a pretty detailed YouTube library. So for different set of services, how do you use that? So we have a very detailed YouTube video library for each services with code samples, walkthroughs, right? Understanding those, this would be a significant resource, and we keep publishing to the same channel, pretty much on a bi-weekly or monthly basis. And the last is another resource. If you are looking to go more deeper into this .NET on AWS, this is an immersion day, and I'll share the link for this. It goes through across different tiers, like starting with the toolkit, how do you configure it, step by step. Then we give you ability to deploy the application. We saw the beanstalk, step by step. Then we give you containers, serverless, right? So this is basically, think of it like a step-by-step help you, and different use cases that can be added on the same, right? So this workshop will be helpful if you're looking to go more deeper on all things .NET on AWS. Okay, with that, I will close out my section, and I'll open up the questions from the team. Hey, Swami there. Hey guys, can you hear me? Okay, I see a question from Karan Gathani. Could we get some link to sample project? Yes. So I will share the link. What I'll be doing is the deck that I went through. I am going to share the PDF version of the deck, which has all the links to the different resources that I have shown. It also has link to the immersion day, wherein you can actually go through, take the sample, and run through across different sections of .NET on AWS. So I'll share this with Swami, and he'll be able to share that in the meetup page. Hope that helps.
You know, if you can put that in our private chat, I can put it out on YouTube as well.
Okay, sure. Let me do that. Okay. Okay, are you able to get that?
I am. This is, yeah. Let me get it out there. Hold on.
Sure.
Okay. Those should be out on the YouTube stream now. Are there any other questions?
I see Dave. Can you bring me to the stream? So, Swami wants you to bring him to the screen.
Okay, you're on.
Hey. Hey guys. Hey Amit, thank you so much. That was a really informative session. So I had one question which I wanted to check. I know we've talked a lot about Visual Studio 2019. Do we also have any extensions for VS Code if anyone is working on VS Code and want to deploy things into AWS?
Yes, so I did show very quickly on VS Code also. So we have the toolkit for VS Code, and also we have a toolkit for JetBrains Rider.
Okay, that's cool. Right.
I mean, the capability-wise, Visual Studio Toolkit has a little bit more capability. VS Code and JetBrains Rider have more for, like, think of it from a serverless-based applications.
Okay, more of a modern applications is something which is out of the box covered in those editors.
Yeah.
Right.
And yes.
Okay. Great. I see there is another question from Diana. Dave, can you bring that in? Are there tips that you follow when troubleshooting, like documentation?
Are there tips that you follow when troubleshooting, like documentation? I mean, if it is troubleshooting, I think the X-Ray service is something that has been very useful to me. Basically, it generates a correlation ID, and once you have that correlation, using which you can actually trace the request across different tiers. Usually, those picky, like how long it took, where it spent, how much time. X-ray recorder, and once you enable that, you'll be able to easily troubleshoot that. Other than that, we have CloudWatch. Think of it equivalent to the infrastructure parameters that you want to see. You can see different metrics using CloudWatch. I showed you App Insights, and it creates a dashboard. That's very useful. Depending on a specific use case, I may be able to help you more, but starting with having the X-Ray integration in your application, having the CloudWatch App Insights integration gets you going like pretty easily to see what's happening in the logs, right? I mean, there are other partners on AWS that actually have centralized logging and then dashboarding on top of it, Datadog, New Relic, Splunk, others, and they have many other enhanced use cases too.
Okay. So I also had another questions. This is more around the CI/CD, right? So what kind of support do we have on GitHub Actions? I know you touched upon Azure DevOps. Are there ready-made templates or the actions available for anyone to consume to deploy things into? Let's say I want to deploy a Lambda into AWS Lambda, right? How do I get started within GitHub Actions specifically?
So we had a like pretty detailed list of tasks published in the Azure DevOps pipeline. Like if you go to the Azure DevOps and there, if you see custom task, we have AWS public. Once you enable the AWS extension, we give you ability to integrate with either AWS Code Suite services or integrate with our infrastructure as a code, like a cloud formation. So we have published good amount of tasks there, right? And specifically talking about GitHub Actions, there are ways in which you can integrate, and we are continuously working to improve that integration more. Are there
great. Thanks,
free
Amit.
credits? And I can share, Swami, detailed of that toolkit. We have a toolkit for Azure DevOps specifically, which publishes both like a higher level also. Like let's take an example. You have a file in Azure DevOps you want to upload to S3. We actually have a S3 upload task. So instead of actually doing a CLI call or a PowerShell call or a script, you actually just use that higher level task, and that abstracts the actual call. So we give you higher level task also, as well as like rudimentary, like integrate with PowerShell, CLI, CloudFormation. So each tier we have that integration there.
Okay, that sounds good. Yeah.
Yeah, so we have free credits, but we will. Do you want to run that quiz or?
Yeah, right. I was just going to touch upon that. Yeah, so we are having a very quiz basically with 5 questions. Nothing tough in it. So yeah, if you followed through the session of Amit, you could very well easily answer those. So I'll just bring that link, and then 5 winners of that quiz would be eligible to get free credits. Right. So Dave, do you? Okay, let me share my screen, and then
each credit is worth $25.
Dollars. Okay, great. So yeah, so that's the link. So I would encourage you guys to go to b.net.in/aws-quiz, and the quiz starts now. So maybe we'll open it for another 5 minutes or so, and then once we have the response, we'll pick the winners, and then I would reach out to you over the email what you are going to provide in that particular quiz form, and then I'll be sharing the voucher codes. Yeah. And we're also going to have a raffle at the end of the session, where if you could fill up the feedback form for this event, right? We'll do a raffle, and then we'll pick one winner who would be eligible to get a JetBrains Toolbox license, right? Since it's virtual, I have to collect your email ID, so don't worry, it's not going to go anywhere else. This is going to be purely used for communicating with you for sharing these goodies. Okay. So yeah, so please, and as this happens, you can also please post your questions, and then we would continue to answer them, because we reserved quite a good amount of time for the Q&A, so we want to make it more interactive, right?
Okay, I see a couple of questions on the comment side. Pupinder, how much time you think it would take to get grip of AWS, specifically from .NET developers' point of view? Okay, that's a little hard one. Time is subjective, and everybody has their own learning speed, how they learn. Like I learn by looking at sample projects and understanding the code. But there is definitely initially, like you want to understand if you're completely new to cloud, obviously there is just a mental model in terms of on-prem to cloud, right? The resources are being created. In the on-prem world, usually infrastructure as code is kind of missing. So that layer comes up in AWS or any cloud provider. So understanding the abstraction, be it ARM templates or CloudFormation templates or Terraform scripts, right? That you have to consider. And depending on what is the use case you are looking to build, if it is a simple web application, web services, the learning curve is much, much quick. Like pretty much you map, is it serverless? Okay, API gateway, Lambda. And there are few set of services that you want to learn, like application developer oriented services. Let's say you're building a data lake on AWS. In that case, there is other set of services that you have to understand. So depending on the use case, you would have different set of services to understand. But in a ground up, we have a pretty detailed what you call study guide, and I can share that with Swami too. You want to start, we have different certifications levels also. So you start with the practitioner level certification, and then we have an associate, basically developer, as well as solution architect certification if you are looking to get certified. So that's another path. Best, according to me, is basically start building something. Like once you start building something, you will start exploring, you will start hitting issues, and that's how you probably learn. And within, I would say, consistent, if you're giving a good amount of time, getting your serverless application onto AWS will be pretty quick, but have the roadmap to learn other services where you can enrich your applications, right? I can't give you a specific 6 months or 1 year. Sometimes it can take more because getting a mastery, it's. I mean, I myself go to customer. I have many times I don't know. I mean, obviously nobody can know so many different services, and it's not about the services. It's also the depth of features inside those services, right? Sometimes you know the service at a high level, but then the detailed feature it takes time to learn. So have a multi-year roadmap. Getting a dev hands-on dirty very quick, you should be able to get moving. And then depending on use cases, you want to do AI ML, you want to do data lake, you want to do contact center, you want to do so there are so many different use cases, right? Depending on that, you may have your own custom learning time.
Yeah, just to add a couple more points, right?
Yeah,
I think he
please go
touched
ahead,
upon a lot of things. So the primary thing is you need to understand the cloud architecture principles, right? That's the thing which is the mindset, and the cloud architecture principles is what we need to learn first. And then once you have that grip of it, because these offerings keep evolving at a very rapid pace, right? Whatever was available today would be like, it might become, obsolete to think of that, to call it that way, right? So things keep changing in a much rapid pace in the offering perspective also, right? So, but what would remain is the cloud architecture principles and the basic concepts of how the entire cloud infrastructure and everything works, right? So get that understanding first, and then it would be, you can definitely build on top of that.
Yeah. I would definitely second that. What he mentioned, understanding that we have something called a well-architected guideline and well-architected paper. If you search AWS well-architected principles, it's a pretty neat white paper to understand best practices across different pillars: security, resiliency, operations, availability. So understanding, going through that would give you a good amount of understanding on the cloud-based architecture principles. right?
Exactly.
I mean, I think somebody mentioned serverless. So let's say you move to microservices completely. Once you move to microservices, there are some set of things that you have to think like, hey, now that everybody's calling over network, what if network is down? So should I have a kind of a retries? There is a principle called exponential backoff, like try, wait, try, wait, double the amount of time, then retry, right? In cloud, there is something called eventually consistent and strongly consistent. Remember, on-prem, you moved from single thread to multi-threaded. You were like, oh, this variable, did it change or not in other thread? Similarly, when you are working with services which are eventually consistent, in that case, the read may not give you the latest copy. Strongly consistent will definitely give you. Again, that's you have to handle that in your code. We are moving towards from a single purpose driven kind of a storage to single storage to a purpose driven storage. So understanding different use cases for your microservices, mapping to the right data tier. Let's say I have a time stream data. Should I put that in a RDBMS and do all kinds of complex correlated subquery, or should I actually use a time stream based database, right? So makes it much simpler. So as you see, it'll keep on, and you won't believe, like my homepage in browser is AWS What's New. Because I don't know what got launched last night, right? So speed with which things is being released.
That's true.
Right.
Yeah.
But AWS What's New is the best place to, if you are looking to understand what is the thing being released. That's definitely a place. And we do this yearly conference, AWS reInvent. That's definitely recommended. That will get you immersed into all thing AWS.
Yeah. And I think, Dave, can you bring that question on the .NET Blazor using AWS serverless? Yeah, I think we skipped this. So do you want to touch upon this, Amit?
Oh yeah, so Blazor is an interesting development. Like I remember the days of Silverlight and ActiveX and Applet on the client side, and Blazor seems promising. I should say that. So we have another service called Amplify for mobile-based development, right? If you haven't explored that, that's also another React, Vue, and other set of services. Currently, we have a different set of server-side backend services that you would integrate with Blazor. Let's say you want to do authentication authorization in your Blazor application, you can use Cognito, which is OAuth-based authentication provider. You can call our API gateway. You can call our AppSync-based, so GraphQL kind of integration. But we are looking to actually integrate more natively in on Blazor. So there might be few developments. At this moment, I see on either a mobile applications via Amplify or Xamarin-based applications, and classic HTML JavaScript-based application connecting to API gateway, AppSync, and using Cognito and other API services for the backend-based operations.
Sure. If I may add a couple of points to that,
please,
right?
please.
Yeah. So basically, .NET Blazor has multiple workloads, right? So if you're looking at an Blazor WASM, which is a WebAssembly based, right? All you need is a static storage, right? So you can pretty much technically put that into an S3 bucket, and then you can, connect to a CDN, and then you can serve your application, right? If you're building an Blazor WASM based application, but if in case you're building a Blazor ASP.NET Core hosted application, then obviously, like whatever the hosting service you have on AWS, you need to host inside that, and then your app will be served, right? So it depends on the workload, but serverless is not really, I wouldn't say it's not really for this, but for a Blazor application, if you want to use serverless as a backend, yes, then you could create a Lambda, and then you could use that as an HTTP endpoint in from your application.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, and I think the new services. Yeah, we'll give you the link. And just a minute. Any other questions?
So I just pasted the link to AWS new link, so where they can see, subscribe to the feed. There is RSS feed.
Okay, great. So, okay, let me go quickly check the quiz results, right? I think, let me quickly get that. And as I do that, I also wanted to, have one more round of interaction with the audience, right? And I hope you guys have filled the quiz, and I also request you to, fill the feedback as well, so that after the quiz winners are announced, I'll also do a raffle for the feedback, right? That's if you want to be part of the JetBrains raffle, right? Otherwise also, I was just thinking to have a bit of an interactivity with this. So if can you please log in or open your browser and then go to www.menti.com and use this code, and you'll be given this question about tell us your feedback about the event in single word, right? Can you please start providing your feedback as I collate the results, and then I'll publish the winners soon. Yeah. So good, bad, ugly, whatever be it, please open up, and then it's we want to hear candidate feedback about the event, right? And if you have any detailed feedback, please go ahead and fill in the feedback form, and then we would use that to improvise in the next time. All right.
Yeah, with that, I want to take a moment and thank everyone for joining today. And thanks, Swami and team, Dotnet Foundation, for hosting me today. Definitely enjoyed presenting, and look forward to, depending on the feedback, like, hey, maybe we want to do a workshop, maybe we want to do a one use case end-to-end deep dive. I may look to come back with Swami and present more sessions.
Yeah, absolutely, Amit. Thank you so much. It was really very informative, and I know a lot of questions would be there, and we can't definitely, fill in the entire AWS stuff for .NET developers in 1 hour or 1.5 hours. Yeah, so we would definitely get the feedback from the audience, and then whatever the, further topics of interest are there, we will schedule you for further sessions. Yeah.
Yeah, and I will share the PDF with you, Swami, so that you can paste it on the meetup link.
Sure. Okay, I think meanwhile, you could continue to answer the questions.
Sure. So if you use Cognito and security groups in Azure AD, you came across using SAML. Let me go through this. Still limitation in size. Our security in Azure is too large for Cognito using SAML. Okay. So this is a specific question from Diana. The question is, if you use Cognito and security groups in Azure AD come across using SAML, is there still a limitation on the size? Our security group in Azure AD is too large for Cognito using SAML. Okay. So for the folks who may be new to this space, authentication has two flavors, right? There is a federation and there is OAuth. SAML is used mostly for the enterprise kind of use cases where Active Directory or Azure AD or other kind of a SAML-based provider. So in that case, once the authentication is done, it generates what is called SAML assertion. It's a XML-based representation, right? And that assertion will have information about the authenticated user. So in this case, Diana's use case, she wants to bring in the security group information into that assertion. So assertion can get bigger depending on the amount of security groups the user is member or part of, right? So there is a size limit that probably is being hit. So Diana, to be frank, at the outset, I don't know exactly what the limit is, and I can look at what that limit is, and is that a way to increase that? So I can come back to you on that. Usually, I have seen from a SAML based integrations, either you do a security group based or you do a user attributes based mapping. If it is pretty large, I don't know, 5,000, or is there a character limit? In that case, you may look to either see if you can get that information in a clubbed manner, right? Can there be a bit representation for each of the information? With specific to Cognito, I have to see the limit. So I'm not very sure on what that limit is. So I'll come back on that with you, Swami.
Yeah, sure. I think we are getting good feedback. Thank you so much, guys. And I kind of pull the winners for the quiz. So two of our audience were able to get all the 5 questions right. And then there are other 4 more people who were able to get like 4 questions right. And out of the 4, I took the fastest fingers first, right? So whoever I was able to complete it first, I kind of picked them. So I'll just announce the names now, and I would reach out to you with the email, whatever you provided in the quiz form, right? And then I'll share the AWS credits voucher code. Yeah. So the 5 winners are: one is Jeff Mueller, and number 2 is Pratik Kumar, and third one is Samir K. Fourth is Diana Boone, and 5th is Nayana K. Congratulations, guys. So I will, like I said, I'll reach out to you over the email ID what you've provided.
Thank you. Thanks to the winners. Thank you for paying attention. Thanks a lot. Hope it was good, worth your time. Look forward to joining more of these sessions. Thank you, Swami. Thanks, .NET Foundation, and thanks all the attendees.
Thank you. Yeah, just one last thing. I am gonna, reveal the winners of the feedback. I mean, from the feedback, I kind of do a raffle, and then I will get the, winners, and then we would just do a wrap up. Yeah, just
Sure.
5 minutes. So yeah, I've got. So what I would generally do is I just open google.com and then just do an random number with the how much what I have. So because people trust Google than humans, right? So I don't want to take any blame for the.
I won't comment on it. I mean, we do have internally spinning the wheel. I don't know if you know that. We spin the wheel and that points to one thing kind of thing, right?
Correct. Yeah, I couldn't get anything ready for this, so I kind of trust on the... Okay, so we've got around five different feedbacks. I'm going to do a raffle among that 5. And I will just pick one from now. Okay, so it was pretty straightforward. And it's Mahadev Shivraj Jotapa. So congratulations. So I will share you and JetBrains Toolbox license. So that I'll also share with you the the steps to redeem the particular license, and then you could use that. Yeah. Okay, all right. Thank you so much, guys. Thank you so much for taking time on a weekday. Some of you maybe have joined before the office, or some of you have joined after your office hours. So thank you so much for taking time and then joining us to learn something new. I hope it was worth your time, and thank you so much, and see you all in the next edition of B.NET UJ Meet soon. Bye bye. Thank you so much, Amit.
Yeah. Thanks everyone.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.